I think people have started joining in. Let's give them a couple of minutes to huddle up. Yeah. Hi everyone. Welcome to the webinar. We'll be starting in 2 minutes. We are just waiting for your fellow participants to join in. Just bear with us for 2 minutes. I think we are 2 minutes already in. So, in respecting the time of people who have already joined, right, we should get started. Hello everyone. We welcome you to the pre-program information webinar on the Chief Operations Officer program by IIM Kozhikode. This comes with two online certificates by Northwestern Kellogg University as well. This is a 12-month long program which is based on synchronous learning model. So you will have live online sessions by the esteemed faculty. One of the professors are also available on this session. Um, and there will be a campus immersion in IIM Kozhikode, which is a very special delight within the program. This comes with also executive alumni status by IIMK. And we've already talked about the two online certificates by Kellogg, right? Uh, I'll quickly go to the webinar agenda. We'll quickly go through some of the program details, why this program has been built, what's the aim. We'll talk about IIM Kozhikode. I'll introduce the speakers, and the faculty would then take us through the key highlights of the program, about also about the Kellogg advantage, and then some really important components, right? Who is this program for? What are they going to learn? And what are the vast variety of content they'll go through? Then this program comes with a lot of activity-based learning. So we'll talk about the Capstone project, business simulation, case studies, and then we'll move on to the certification and Q&A piece, where all of you can ask questions. If there are any questions through the flow of this conversation, please type them in the chat or in the Q&A chat box. We'll be happy to take them at the end of the presentation. We have dedicated at least 15-20 minutes for that activity. Then we'll leave you with some information on how to learn more about this program and how to enroll into this program. So without wasting time, let me introduce you the Chief Operating Officer by IIM Kozhikode. The main need that was identified in the market was that a majority of current COOs, right, they say that yes, we can reinvent our businesses through technology, right? But the short-term deployment of that technology is a very important factor into how successful that will be, right? This entails clearly stating goals, understanding how they will remodel their teams, and how they will be achieving this transformation, right? This is very critical to reinventing any business in today's world. And with the constant churn of technology and business landscapes, this is a core capability of a COO or an aspiring COO. That's why IIM Kozhikode has launched this program designed for seasoned operations leaders, operations and supply chain leaders, where in this 12-month program, with a comprehensive pedagogy of live lectures, guided capstone, and campus immersion, they will be able to learn how to hone their financial acumen, how to basically lead C-suite and have that C-suite leadership quotient, what executive presence is required, and then what are the capabilities required to spearhead the transformation and change management, right? This program is starting on 29th of December. So we have 3 weeks until the program starts. So we are at the last leg of enrollments into the program. This program will run again like for 12 months, and the price point is 6,50,000 plus GST. Uh, will and if there is any questions on the enrollment process, the application process, any of the payment plans that are available for your ease, right? You can reach out to us for admission counseling, and we'll be happy to support any questions that you have. Um, Now, let me introduce the esteemed faculty of this program. Professor Ashutosh Sarkar. He is a professor in the Quantitative Methods and Operations Management area in IIM Kozhikode. He is an accomplished academic, right? He has done his PhD from IIT Kharagpur. He has expertise in supply chain management, procurement, and applied optimization. He has been a Fulbright visiting scholar at University of Texas, right? Sarkar has also won multiple awards in areas like public sector, OR, and at various prestigious meetings, right? Uh, Professor Sarkar has also been awarded the Best Professor in Supply Chain Management in the World Education Congress, right? So the professor is coming with a lot of high accolades, and we can truly trust in his expertise. Then we have another professor, Professor Associate Professor Arqum Mateen. He's also the professor of the same business area of quantitative methods and operations management. He comes with a fellowship in operations management from IIM Calcutta and an MBA in marketing and operations management from IMT Ghaziabad. He's also a mechanical engineer, so we can assume that he has been into operations from the very start of his learning journey. He has presented at various prestigious conferences like Indian Academy of Management and focusing on areas like uh, power dynamics in green investments, right? Strategic supplier development. These are some very important topics for any operations leader these days. And professor and his research is so valuable that he also won the Satish K. Sehgal Doctoral Award during his learning journey, right? So we can truly trust his expertise again. So Professor Arkham, I welcome you. Thank you for taking out this time for us. And please enlighten us more about this program.
Sure. Thank you so much. And I join Ayush in welcoming all of you for this webinar. What I'll do is I'll quickly go ahead and start and give you both macro as well as micro perspectives, right? And to begin with, I think let me start by giving you an idea about IMK, even though most of you already know it. First of all, it's a lovely campus, right? The photo that you see in my background, it's the IMK campus, right? So I'm sitting literally on the bottom left corner of that picture, right? So it's a lovely campus. So that's, first things first, especially people from the north, right? Like me, you can appreciate the goodness of oxygen that kind of hits your nostrils, right? So it's a lovely place. But yeah, that's one part of it. We focus on academics. Let me come to the academic part, right? So IMK, as I think all of you or most of you might know, is part of the first generation IIMs, as people like to call it now. And it was started almost 25 years back, and it has been a pioneer of sorts for a long time. Now, what do we? Everyone says we are a pioneer, but let me try to give you some context also. See, you would have noticed, right, that for example, when unfortunately COVID hit, a lot of institutes were scrambling that how do you transition from offline to online. IMK has had online for the last 20 years. We were the first institute in entire Asia to launch an online curriculum almost 20 years back. So for us, the transition was very, very smoothless, relatively speaking. Of course, there will always be hiccups, but relatively. So IMK has always been at the forefront, whether it's in terms of technology, whether it's in terms of diversity. You see a lot of companies talking about diversity now, right? IMK has been talking about diversity almost 15 years back. So far, right, especially nowadays, people have started talking about broad basing technology, looking at multiple perspectives. We have an MBA in liberal studies. So my point is that as an institute, IMK has always not only been driving the change, but also in some senses foreshadowing the change. And the manifestation of this is, as some of you might have read, right? We have been able to do something that was almost unthinkable just 5 years back, which is becoming a top three IIM in the country. For those of you who have been associated with management, right, you know that it's not easy to break the constraints. So we have been able to not only do that but sustain that, and that's what the idea of IMK is all about. It not only do you have to achieve excellence, you have to sustain. Without sustaining, there is no excellence, really, right? So that's IMK for you. The long and short of it, what I'm trying to say is that as an institute, we definitely try our level best to sort of keep up with the times, and not only keep up with the times but also shape the times. And that's where this program kind of fits into this narrative. So that is broadly the IMK idea for you. Multiple awards, multiple accreditations. We are trying for the so-called triple crown accreditation of the world of academia, right? So it's AMBA accreditation, ACSB accreditation, and IQUIS. So all three are in the works. So we'll be one of the very few institutes in the world with a triple crown accreditation shortly, hopefully. And of course, I mean, all of you know that, right? One of the salient points of this program is also the association with Kellogg. Now, this is an async module, and the idea is that, okay, how do you take the expertise of IMK as an institute leader from India, and how do you bring the world, right? Some of you might know that the motto of IMK is globalizing Indian thought. I'm sure if you look at the IMK website, some of you would have seen that, right? So not only do we globalize India thought, we also Indianize global thought, right? So that's where both of these kind of come together, right? So we will have our inputs, of course, yes, but then you have inputs from Kellogg also. And the idea there is that if you look at the expertise of IMK, what is the expertise of IMK? Broadly speaking, basically we have an understanding of the Indian context. How do technology, operations, supply chains, all of it come together? And Kellogg historically has been one of the preeminent standard bearers of education in the US in the Western context. So the idea of these modules is to also give you a first-hand exposure to themes like digital transformation, role of technology, AI, and all that stuff. So basically, we're trying to marry the best of both the worlds, right? The Indian perspective and the global perspective, and that's where the Kellogg module sort of come to, so to speak. So generally, what we have done, for example, is we walk you through the IMK module, and then of course you have the separate Kellogg module, which kind of makes for a one full comprehensive program. So that's the Kellogg advantage. Primarily, they will be focusing more on the technology aspects and then the disruption aspects and the AI aspects and all that stuff, right? All right. So before we dig deeper, the highlights version of the package, so to speak, right? So typically, what we do is let me walk you through the operational as well as strategic aspects both. So typically, the sessions happen on Saturdays, on weekends, right? 6:45 to 9:45, and as part of that, what we do is we also would have a series of faculty members coming and talking about the areas of expertise. So you saw two of us, right? So myself and Professor Sarkar. Management is a vast discipline, right? So two people cannot help you understand the full of it. So what we do is we also request other faculty members depending on the design. So we'll talk of design shortly afterwards. So we would have people from finance area, accounting area, strategy area, marketing area, also trying to give. And of course, our major focus is on operations. So most of the modules would revolve around operations, but we do try to give you holistic, multifunctional, multidisciplinary perspective in that. In terms of expectations, there's a capstone project. I'll talk to it after I did not discuss the programs. But two, the other important things is we also have a few sessions by industry leaders and industry practitioners. Right? We bring the concept, right? They bring the context, and that makes for a heady brew, so to speak. Right? So they come and talk about their experiences, how they have transformed supply chains, what kind of risk do you foresee on the horizon, and stuff like that. And finally, to cap it all off, right, the valedictory ceremony typically gets done as part of the campus immersion. It's a lovely campus, as I mentioned in the beginning. So we have a 3-day campus immersion. And so it's a mix of both, right? It's a mix of, you getting to know your peers physically, right? You keep on seeing videos and photos, but then you realize, oh my God, right? In real life, the person is completely different. So it makes for some nice conversations, really. Right? But more importantly, it is also an occasion for you to get exposure to the IMK classroom experience. Online is good, great, but then it's a different flavors, right? So it also allows you to get a flavor of that aspect also. Once the program gets over, what typically happens is the relationship from an IMK perspective gets transferred from the training, the MDP office to the alumni office. So that's where you become part of the executive alumni cohort of various other programs. So we have a lot of programs running like this. So you become a part of that community, and then going forward, they take care of the trans relationship, right? So they will be your first point of contact in case you have any query, if you want to reach out, if you want to help out, if you want to have, I mean, basically anything and everything under the sun, right? It's purely voluntary. So it's completely up to you how you want to take the conversation, how do you want to take the relationship forward. And as part of all of this process, you get to learn, meet, and experience with everyone. The reason I'm highlighting this aspect is that, see, unlike engineering, unlike accounting, where many of you might be coming from, right, presumably, management is a slightly different flavor because uh, some things are taught, but a lot more is learned. What do we mean by that? See, classroom lectures are one part of it, right? But learning is 360 degree. You learn from your peers. More importantly, you learn from yourself. How do you do that? See, the curriculum would ask you to have some time for reflection also. You have done a session. Yes, the session was on supply chain strategy, but what does it mean? Maybe the case study was from quick commerce, but you are from, let's say, mining industry. So how do you take those concepts, those trade-offs, those frameworks, and then leverage it to your concept? That asks you to do some reflection. Without reflection, management education, especially, I would say all education, but definitely management education, is almost useless. So there's a significant component of reflection also in the process. Peer learning, your own learning, of course, faculty members would be there. That's it. And in terms of pedagogy, case study would be the predominant mode. But if you're afraid of mathematics, rest assured, right, there will be some math, some data, some analytics also in the prep. It's not a program analytics, but you can't have conversations about operations without having some element of analytics also. So not too much, just the right amount, right? Not too sweet, not too salty, just the right amount. So we'll have some element of that also. So that's in terms of the design. If I'm not wrong, I think the sessions are on Saturdays, if I'm not mistaken. But I think maybe Emeritus team can just verify it in the background. Saturdays is whatever, that they can always let. In terms of pedagogy, in terms of curriculum, in terms of the setup. So those are the broad highlights. Let's get deeper into the design. So who have we designed this program for? See, I'll take you a little. I'll take a step back, right? See, Mr. Sarkar and I have been in this field for several decades now. If you combine our experience, several decades now. And every year, right, given our job, I mean, that's literally our job description, right? You end up talking to managers in the thousands. I mean, that's literally our JD, right? So talk to people, deliver sessions, trainings, consulting, and all that, right? So what we realized was that uh, somewhat unfortunately, operations, especially in the Indian context, was not getting its due historically. But post-COVID, right, when you had anyone and everyone trying to understand that, okay, how do supply chains look like? What is risk? What is disruption? I mean, you literally had our prime minister, US president, EU commissioner, UK, everyone talking of supply chains. So that was no, that I would say in some senses people realize that hey, operations and supply chain is something that you can't really live with, right? So that's where the conversation slowly started. But then what you realize is that okay, this is where you want to take the conversation, but how do you go from here to there, right? So you require some accelerator, some launch pad, some springboard. So we are hoping that through this program, we are able to provide that springboard. We're able to give the competencies, we're able to give those capabilities, we're able to give that ready reckoners, so to speak, right? That enables people, companies, and nations, for example, to make that leap. Because supply chains are here, right? They are here. You see what is happening in the global world, right? Whether it's the geopolitics of, whether it's the riskiness of it, whether it's in terms of the kind of currency risk. I mean, the world around us is in a bit of chaos. Let's be honest, right? So how do supply chains make their way through? So we'll see all of that and more as part of this program. So essentially, when we were designing this program, we said, okay, we are looking for two kind of segments. The first is essentially people who are aspiring to be operational leaders, right? Now, just to clarify, right, when we say operational leaders, we don't mean people who will just make the process better. See, understanding the process is important, right? But understanding the system is also important. So micro and macro both have to be done. So that is stream one is for people who want to aspire to be CEOs. And we also want people who are currently operational leaders also to come in. See, what happens is the people on the right, people who are already in operational leadership positions, they would have their experiences, but they might want to learn, okay, what is the next generation of technologies, next generation of frameworks looking like? And the people on the left, right, basically people who aspire to be CEOs, they would want to learn from their peers. So we want to create those communication pathways. We want to create those learning pathways that help us connect both of them. Of course, with us somewhere in the middle, taking this conversation forward. So that is broadly what we are looking for. There are some qualification criteria. Of course, each academic program needs to have some qualification criteria. But more than that, right? I mean, once you meet that criteria, we are looking for people with a learning orientation. Someone wants to learn. you are most welcome, right? I mean, it does not mean just because you have not worked in operations for the last 3 years, can you not learning oriented? Right? If you want to learn, most welcome. If you have an interest in operations, most welcome. If you want to make a transition in your supply chains, most welcome. So we are primarily looking for learning oriented because that is something that would separate you from the rest. So that is in terms of the segmentation and targeting that, okay, who have we designed the program for, right? That's what we have tried to design at a broad level, right? So that is what. Then the most important question is, so what? Okay, you do the program, then so what? So basically what we are trying to do this program in terms of learning outcomes is that essentially we're looking at 3, 4 aspects, right? See, first of all, is it allows you to understand supply chains at a very, very micro level, right? I'm talking, we go into as deep a level as trying to understand at process level. How do you analyze a simple process, right? How do you analyze, how do you improve the efficiency of the process? How do you look at, what are the KPIs of a process? How do you design those aspects? So we'll start at a very micro level. Not only that, we also try to link that, okay, how is operations linked to strategy? So we're looking for people in terms of outcomes who would be learning how do you understand processes, how do you analyze processes, how do you improve processes, and should you have a process, right? In the age of automation, right? You can also remove the process. So that's one part, right? That's a micro aspect. Then what you're also looking is that, okay, you have understood that, okay, how to improve that. The next question is what is to be done? What is the strategy part of it, right? And the third part is how do you make this jump from where you are and where to go? So that we also look at aspects around change management. We also look around operational leadership. We also talk about, how do you look at operations for right now? How do you make operations future ready? So we want to provide you industry insights. We want to provide you future readiness. We want to provide you a little bit, a little bit of analytical skills. It's not a program on supply chain analytics, but we do have to have a flavor of that. And possibly, and most importantly, we are trying to give you a holistic perspective of how do you take operations in action. So those are the key features of in terms of learning outcomes, how we are trying to do that. Outcomes in terms of how we have designed, what are the modules, is what kind of lies ahead. So let's kind of get into those aspects also. Right. So how do we do that? How do we deliver those learning outcomes? This, to my mind, is the most important part, right? The curriculum, which helps us differentiate from other programs. So what we have done is the IIM modules, we have tried to define them across 4 different headlines: diagnostics, effectiveness, excellence, and transformation. Let me tell you why. This nomenclature has some meaning. See, diagnostics is you go to a doctor, right? The first thing that he or she would do is possibly try to run a battery of tests. Is something wrong? What is wrong, right? Then what they will do is they will try to treat you, right? Once you've identified a problem, you try to solve for the problem through medication, etc., etc. More importantly, right, they will also try to say that, hey, how do you, prevent the problem from happening at all, right? Whether it's through healthy lifestyle, right, or whatever it might be, right, through dieting, through healthy lifestyle. And the last part you would notice is how do you become a part of that healthy lifestyle? How do you make that transformation? So diagnostics, effectiveness, excellence, and transformation. What is wrong? How to solve it? How to prevent it from being wrong? How do you put yourselves on that path? So these are the 4 modules that we have designed. Diagnostics would primarily try to talk about how do you look at, for example, right, the health of a firm. Is a firm doing well or not? We'll talk about managerial aspects in terms of accounting. So there'll be sessions on accounting, ratio analysis. How do you look at financial statements? We'll talk about process analysis from an operations viewpoint. We'll talk about customers from a marketing lens. Okay, what is customer value to begin with? Every customer wants to be delivered value, but what is value, right? And then we'll also talk a little bit of analytical approaches. So a little bit of data science, a little bit of predictive, prescriptive, all kind of analytics would be touched upon here also. That okay, how do you do that? So that is module 1. How do you assess the health of your organization or your process or your task? That is module 1 for you. Module 2 is trying to take the scope a little bit more. That okay, once the diagnostics is in place, what to do now? So we'll talk about supply chain strategy. We'll talk about supply chain design. We'll talk about inventories a lot. We'll talk about forecasting. We'll talk about balance scorecards, right? So the idea here is, okay, I have understood there are some problems. So what? What to do next? So that is module 2 for you, which we are calling operational effectiveness. The third one is operational excellence, which is what we all aspire for, right? Excellence. Excellence is where the conversation will move in a different stratosphere altogether, right? Because you will notice that you go from micro to macro. You go from Earth to space, or in the word of Elon Musk, right? You go from Earth to Mars, right? If you're a believer in Elon Musk. Anyway, so my point is, right, that we try to understand what are the frameworks around operational and business excellence. So we'll talk about quality, but not quality the way you would talk about, let's say, control charts. No, that is very micro. Right? We want to understand quality in a larger business strategy sense. What is quality excellence? right? So we'll have case discussions, we'll have examples, and experience sharing, peer learning, all of that. We'll also talk about sustainability, right? Because nowadays an organization cannot be excellent without being sustainable. So sustainability, we'll have a important discussion around nature of sustainability, right? Is it a hogwash? What are the mechanisms? How do you leverage sustainability and stuff like that? And given the world that we are living in, right, basically all about issues around deglobalization, issues around geopolitics, issues around all kind of risks. So we'll have also discussions around supply chain risk management and project management also. And to cap it all off, right, we'll talk about operational transformation. Okay, we understood excellence. How do you move the team? So we'll talk about change management. How do you take people from here to there? We'll also talk about negotiations and conflict management. We'll also talk a little bit about the role of technology in that transformation. And we'll also talk about, how do you look at emerging technologies like blockchain, supply chain traceability, and all that, and how does it make our supply chains future ready? So as I said, diagnostics, which is about looking at the problems per se. Effectiveness, how do you solve those? Excellence, aspirations, transformation, how do you meet those aspirations? So that is the program module structure in a nutshell in terms of what we look for, right? And let's continue forward and we'll take a conversation, right? As mentioned, right? So these are the two certifications from Kellogg, as I mentioned in the beginning, right? They are also talking about AI, so they will go more into the technology aspects in a lot more detail. So this is giving you more breadth. AI in electric support functions, AI in automotive industries. I mean, basically, it's a broad-based treatment of artificial intelligence because the world is moving towards AI. And second is more about a little bit about how do you look at 0 to 1, right? So how do you go from here to there in terms of your growth plans? So how do you scale up the organizations? How do you go from, how do you leverage people's potentials? How do you hire for capabilities and stuff like that? So these are the modules from Kellogg's, right? As we mentioned. An important part, and the reason I'm saying important part is not from learning, but because people generally hate us for this component, right? We force you to work, right? Of course, all of you join the program for work, but we force you to work on Capstone projects. Why am I using the word force? I'll tell you what happened with the previous batch. Right? So we asked everyone after the end of module 1, because module 1 is diagnostics, remember, right? So you have the tools. So we asked everyone to diagnose their respective organization, operationally, financially, market-wise, industry-wise. And that takes a bit of effort. So this was individual, right? And in order to force it, right? So we asked you to create a video of yourself, right? Explaining that process. So there's a bit of effort which goes into that, right? And then what we did was Professor Sarkar and I sit together, we go through all of those videos, take notes, compare notes, and then give individual feedback. So that's a fairly intensive process. And once you have that feedback, then we give you small templates that, hey, these are the outcomes that we are looking for. Now start working on the Capstone project. So it takes a bit of effort on both sides, for on our end also, and of course at your end. So while you are working on the project, you hate us, but hopefully at the end of the day, you will love us. At least that's what we're hoping for, right? But that's a very important part of the assessment experience and really helps you to contextualize the learning to your context, right? Yeah. In terms of pedagogy, we also have a few simulations that we are lined up. We keep on changing them depending on the cohort, etc. But broadly, the idea of a simulation is to make the learning a bit more hands-on. Right? See, learning is anyway context dependent. Cases are contextual, but sometimes simulation allows you to see your words into action. That's the beauty of a simulation, right? So, for example, right, some of the simulations that we have used. So, one of the simulations was on something called a beer game, for example, right? Unfortunately, without any beer. Just a disclaimer: don't drink, don't recommend. So, don't take it too seriously. But my point is, the idea is that okay, how do you look at coordination in a beer game, right? Beer is moving from across different levels of a supply chain, what issues happen, etc. So that's an interesting simulation that helps you understand that okay, how do supply chains work all the way from manufacturer to the final consumer? What kind of issues did you encounter? Forecasting issues, coordination issues, information issues. I mean, 1,000 different issues. So it gives you a very real life-ish experience of how do supply chains work. One of the other simulations that we typically do is a simulation called global supply chain simulation. What this simulation does is it takes you through a series of planning processes. So you have to look at design of a product, you have to forecast its sales, right? You have to promote it a little bit. Then you have to sign contract production contracts with your suppliers. Then you have to execute it also. There will be disruptions, fires. There will be Diwali bonuses, all that stuff. So it kind of works through the entire life cycle of supply chain execution. So these simulations essentially bring many of those learning into more lifeline context, and people generally like them a lot and learn a lot also from these. So pedagogy-wise, as I said, peer learning definitely, assignments, simulations, case studies, and all that. Case studies again, Indian and global both. One small thing that I would like to highlight here is that sometimes people get bogged down in too much into case studies, right? So one of the issues that sometimes people say that, hey, no, this case is outside India. How does it matter, right? Focus on the learning. CS is just a context. We focus on the concept. The context will be both Indian and global. See, when you are working in the global marketplace, right, the world is your oyster, right? India, China, Venezuela, Vietnam, no, everything matters. So we'll have a global perspective on this. We'll have the Indian perspective as well as global perspective. So case studies will be all across. We'll have Indian case studies also, global case studies also. Some of them written by the two of us also as we kind of move along, right? So in fact, for the last batch, literally in the next program, I'm about to do a case study written by me called ONDC. Some of might have heard ONDC. So we'll discuss how do you look at ONDC-driven supply chains. So we'll do a lot of that stuff. So whatever learnings we have, we'll try to use them in our classrooms. And of course, discuss with all of you, learn from all of you, right? So those are in terms of case studies. And to cap all of your hard work, right? This is what we all kind of come to, right? Certificate, right? So, I mean, as academicians, we look at more as a logical outcome, not the rise or the earth of joining the program, right? This is something that will happen organically. So don't worry too much about the certificates. But yes, there will be some constraints, right? So you'll have to pass some assessments. You'll have to, maintain some attendance. See, because peer learning is important, right? So not only should you be prepared, you should be prepared because others will learn from you. So believe me, I will really keep on harping this point again and again. Peer learning, peer learning, peer learning. So typically we have two kind of certificates. We call it something called certificate of participation. We also have something called certificate of completion. So participation is when you mandate your presence physically, and completion is when you are able to meet the assessment thresholds also. So that's it's not a policy of the IMK for just this program. It's a pan program policy. So that's a standard IMK policy. But yes, as I said, don't worry about this. If you're showing up on time, you're doing the assessments, doing the assignments, doing the background readings, having peer discussions, etc., etc. I mean, as I said, it's a logical outcome of the process. So as operations people will focus on the process. Outcomes is something that should happen organically. So don't worry too much about this aspect. Yeah. Right. That's in terms of certifications. Yes. I mean, Kellogg's will have their own certificate, right? You always require some certification at the end, just to do as a testament to your hard work, right? Yeah. Right. I'm glad to see Professor Sarkar also joining in, right? Professor Sarkar, thank you so much. I know, right? You had a lot of operational hiccups, right? Supply chain issues while joining. So I have tried to give them an overview, but maybe a few thoughts from you also, Professor. Please.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Arqum. So my sincere apologies. Actually, I was traveling. I was hoping that I will reach the guest house by 12 o'clock. But in spite of the train being Vande Bharat, I had the worst journey in Vande Bharat. So it was delayed by more than 1 hour. So an operational glitch. And we are about to talk about operations. Yeah, so whatever it is, that is the reason why I got delayed. But I could see some part of Professor Arqum's talk, and he has covered more or less everything. So just I would like to add a few things, like say, although most of them have already been emphasized by Professor Arqum. So this is the second batch that we are launching, and our experience with the first batch was very, very good. As well as the participants also enjoyed it a lot. There are many reasons why, or from participants' point of view, as well as from our point of view, there are a lot of value. So let me first talk about our value. So we being academicians, we derive a lot of value whenever we see more engagements. And in the process, through these engagements, we also learn a lot. It's not that only the participants learn. Only difference is that the participants pay a fee for the learning and we don't pay, or we take the money. That's the only difference. However, the learning is both sides. The learning is both sides. Primary, one of the major reason is that the quality of the participants and their background. If you look at the first batch, the amount of experience they brings into the table, and we learn from each other's, the kind of discussions that we have. So this program is unlike many other programs where we generally, the faculty will teach something and the participants will receive something. It is not that way. It is more the conversation or the discussions that we have. The learning mostly comes out of that. And that is where the participants' experience and exposure background makes a lot of things. And in fact, another important aspect in this learning process is that the diversity of the experience. Someone may be working in, say, hotel industry, someone may be working in manufacturing industry, someone may be working in airline, right? So look at the same issue being discussed, but from different industries' perspective. And immediately the context changes, right? Although the context changes, you will realize that, oh, the concept that we are talking about uh, are to be, there are something like a limits to this concept in general, and then for every concept there are ifs and buts, and there is something, lot of adaptation that needs to be done, there are tweaks needs to be done to fit to different context, and that itself is a very good learning. So that is the second part. The third important part, or that is where we primarily focus in this program, is that, see, most of you have, those whoever we will be joining this program, they mostly come from operational background, although need not be always engineers. We also have diverse educational background also. So when we have such diversities, although working with operations, they have a fairly good amount of execution experience. Then the question comes, what is the value of this program when you are doing the same thing days in, days out? Like, say, for simple thing like, say, supply chain, you are managing supply chain days in, day out. And even like, say, for example, I teach something called procurement or supply management. I also teach inventory, and you are managing it for maybe fairly, some people are even managing for 2 decades, 3 decades, right? So then what is the value that you derive by joining this program or this interactive session? So one of our emphasis is that we try to bring in perspective. And so our role is, rather than a teacher or an instructor, our role is more like a facilitator. So there are a lot of ideas that flows into the discussion, and we try to organize them and bring in a perspective which for almost, at least so far, our experience has been that we have heard many people saying that, oh, I am managing these things for so many years, but I never thought that way. Oh, so this is something like an eye-opening for them. So that mindset changing, or say the changing the perspective, solves a lot of problems. And especially at a senior level or at a COO level, this perspective and this mindset is the more or the biggest issue than actually execution, because it's not very difficult to do things which you have been doing on a daily basis, right? It's just a replication. But when it comes to changes, and in fact, one of the things that is happening, Indian economy is growing, and it's growing at a very fast rate. And you will realize that the role that you have been playing 1 decade back or 2 decade back, that has changed significantly. The business has changed. And another important thing is that technology is changing so significantly, right? Like Professor Arqum was talking a lot about data analytics and even other technologies, right? So that has, like, say, long back, I had one student, PhD student, he is the head supply chain of a Tata group of company. Very senior people, and this is long back, fairly long back, 1.5 decades back. So that time, data analytics people have just started talking about data. And his view, he was very senior. In fact, he has retired. So he was many years senior to me. So his view about data was like this, that, oh, I don't need all this data because everything is in my mind. And everything, I'm not facing any problem just because I do not have data, or I do not have a system to manage data or analyze data. Everything is in my mind and I can fairly do well. But if you talk of today's date, so because of technology and because of especially digital technologies and computer science, as well as developments in maths, you can do wonders with data. And in fact, whereas this student of mine who was very old, or during his peak period, they were more used to taking decisions in the absence of data. But today's world, today's CEOs cannot take decisions without data. Data is flooded, right? So around you, everywhere there is data available. Only thing that is required is just choose the right data and use it for taking more business uh, decisions as well as get business advantage. Just I would like to cite one example, our recent experience, and why these things are very, very important and perspectives are different. Perspectives are very, very important. We were doing one consulting assignment, and so far from the very beginning, we have been fed that this is the problem, this is the problem. And at some point in time, we were actually swayed away by the narratives, by the various stakeholders that we have interacted with, including CEOs to operational level executives who are doing things hands-on. But then we have looked at the data. And when we have looked at the data, we realize that, well, the problem is not here. The problem is actually here. So the moment we have redefined our problem, immediately, so initially we were clueless what to be done. But the moment we have found out that the problem is here, then we could work out a very good solution, and our client as well as there were other stakeholders, they were very, very happy. In fact, one of the client have said that, so this is the statement that he has made, and we are very happy to share that the intelligent professors of IIMK could tell us that, oh, this is not the problem, this is the problem. But so far we have been fed, or we have been brainwashed that this is the problem. So that is what is the value of scientific methods. I'm not just talking about data, but the benefit of scientific methods, the benefit of the bringing in different perspective, or looking at the problem from multiple perspective, as well as thinking more strategically at CEO level. When we are talking of strategically, in fact, this strategic thinking is very, very important, especially because earlier, if you look at, say, when we were in our college, the Tata Steel during my college days was 30 years or 40 years back. It was same Tata Steel. The operations were routine because things were growing at a very organically. It was a very, very stable environment. But today's date, every 2 years, things change, right? And we are also becoming more global and global. So that is why this perspective, strategic thinking, and the use of data and other scientific methods, all of these are important. And in fact, the life of a CEO becomes very, very challenging. And in fact, if you look at, say, many of the unicorns that are there, especially in India, they are execution heavy. So most of them, they are successful or they are unicorn because they are execution heavy. And in fact, if you fail on execution, you are gone. And that brings in, and in fact, most of them are operating actually in the traditional sector itself, but they are gaining traction only because they are able to do it in different way. They are able to leverage technology and the scientific methods. Like, for example, say Swiggy, Zomato, and the rise of the Japto, or say Instamart and Blinkit. You see that the traditional retailers, and in fact, look at the kind of things that are changing, right? So, say a refinery, a oil company coming into retail, disrupting things, and then there are some nobody, basically. These are some executives who thought it differently, leverage technology, and they are able to shake the solid foundations of the old traditional business models, right? So that is what basically we plan to do it in our program. Primarily, again, highlighting, we will be more of doing a more conversations, discussions, and look at the problems and the issues from multiple perspectives. That is what is our objective in this program. And we will be playing more the role of a facilitator rather than trying to teach. Yes, we will bring in something theory which we know, as well as some basic experiences that we have. Honestly speaking, obviously, if you look at, say, managing businesses, you are the boss. So we cannot basically, when it comes to that, how things are done, a particular job is done in the industry at this point in time, you are the master. We have no clue about it. But we focus more on the way we think, the way more we look at the problems. That is what will be our focus, primarily during all the year. Yeah, there will be, as Professor Arqum has said, that there are certain tools and techniques, basic things that we will be focusing, that will also be covered, but mostly our focus will be on pushing the boundaries of our thought process. That's the only objective, or the main objective. Yeah, thank you. So over to you, Professor Arqum.
Beautifully said, Professor. Thank you so much for sharing that. And Professor Akam, trust me, I was smiling all through, right? Your conversation was so enlightening. It was heartwarming. So I think we have reached the end of the presentation and we'll open up for Q&A. I see there are some questions already in, but please, anybody who has more questions, please keep adding, right? So Professor, the first question is, Mr. Zishan, he's in a startup in manufacturing industry, working as an operations executive. He wants to understand how would this program help him because he's coming from a startup that too in a manufacturing industry. Any Professor Arqum, Ashutosh, anybody can say.
Sure. Ashutosh, shall I go ahead or you want to?
Yeah, you can proceed. Yeah.
Zishan, I think first of all, lovely to see you here, and I think believe me, right, when 10 years back, people with operations within startups would have been very, very difficult to find because that was not the norm. So I think you are, people like you are driving the change in the country going forward. So lovely to have you with us. Now, that's a very pertinent question that startup manufacturing industry and operations executive. I think there are 2-3 ways in which you can benefit from that. The first is typically in startups, what happens is that there is a lot of innovation, but sometimes processes end up taking a little bit of a backseat, right? I mean, in terms of standardization, in terms of processes. So one is we'll try to look at the nature of processes. How do you, look at things? How do you stabilize things? And more importantly, how do you, for example, create a structure and strategy for your supply chains also? That is level one, right? That is level one. The second level that would possibly benefit is that because we'll also talk about transformation, right? That, okay, so one of the things might be that it also allows you to calibrate yourself. That, okay, the way you look at the industry and the way, let's say, some of the other frameworks look at the industry. How do you synchronize both, right? I mean, it's not a question of being correct. It's a question of synchronization, right? What works and what does not work. So that's at a higher level of abstraction. And I would say the last level at which you could possibly benefit is that it also allows you to change your level of thinking. To my mind, that is the most important. Tools, frameworks, and all of this go in so big. Possibly by interacting with your fellow peers, by being exposed to, let's say, different faculty members, different frameworks, different thought processes, different people from industry leaders also will come and talk to you. And working on the project, possibly it allows you to transition, to help it transform your thinking process also. So one is in terms of processes, the second in terms of strategies, and the third is in terms of, I would say, the personal self also. So you could look at transformation at individual level, right? Organizational level and strategic level. I think that's the way I would look at it.
Yeah, shall I add something?
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
So coincidentally, I am also heading our incubator. We actually have supported many startups, as well as we deal with investors, as well as a lot of startups, entrepreneurs. So this is what has been our understanding, that yes, there are certain, I'm sure you are, because you are in a startup already, you must have realized already that idea is definitely important, but idea is not everything. And in fact, ideas evolve. Execution actually makes the difference between idea to execute, or in the process of idea to execute, the success. And in the process, even ideas evolve. So if that is the case, so that means the whole startup journey or your entrepreneurial journey is nothing but a process of learning. You learn, redo, and again learn, right? So learn, redo, learn. So that is the process that continues. And until and unless this learning happens, yes, sometime you may be successful, but it will not be long lasting, right? So this is the first thing. The second thing, whenever you are startup, you have to be operating at a very, very, in fact, finally, initially, you will be just burning cash. So as you are looking for funding, and immediately people will look at that, what is your burn rate, right? Even what is your basically you will have to actually operate at a very low cost. Otherwise, you will not get a foothold in the market, right? So then you will be fighting against cost, right? How to control cost, right? So although initially at the time there will be a lot of sponsor who will be bearing the cost that you will be or the cost of any inefficiency in the initial years, but as time progresses, your sponsors or your investors will demand that efficiency has to be going up. Even you will also find that when you are actually during your journey, things are still evolving, right? The business conditions and then the market conditions may not remain same. It will evolve. So that is where if one doesn't go into the fundamentals, then the success may not be long lasting. So that is the key point. So like so that is the story with most of my old students who have built unicorns. So when they have started and today's date, the idea has changed, and only reason why they are successful is the way they have managed their execution. That's the only difference. So I have basically I have a long background of working in different institutions, primarily in the IITs. And in IITs, many of my old students have built many unicorns. And I'm telling from that experience of mine. So that's how the program or this current program becomes very, very relevant. So yes, like as I have said, how you are exactly doing in your own kind of business and in your own context, we may not be specifically talking about it, but you will find that similar things many others are doing, many others have done earlier, and there are a lot of learnings that you can apply in your journey also. But the key point is that learning, that mindset is very, very important. That openness and then the continuous learning. That is, and obviously the execution skill, that is what is going to make a difference. That's from my side.
Great, great. Thank you so much. Then there is another question from Mr. Abdul. And that's a valid question because supply chain has been mentioned so many times in this conversation. He's asking that he does not use supply chain on a broader perspective in his work. Basically, you are from operations, but you don't use supply chain. So how would this program help? Because we've talked about supply chain so much.
Shall I respond, Prasarkam? So it's actually not correct that you talk of any business. You cannot have a business without supply chain. Whether it is healthcare, whether it is retail, whether it is manufacturing, or whether it is a law firm, legal firm, or whether it is an educational institution like me or like us, there is a supply chain. So it depends on how do you look at the supply chain, or how do you define the supply chain. Many people tries to look at supply chain in a very, very tangible and operational terms. And if you look at that way, then obviously you will find that, okay, my supply chain is not very significant. Or someone is looking at supply chain as a function, in a functional role, or as a function. Like say I have a department function called supply chain, right? Interestingly, you will find that in company X, supply chain looks after purchasing. In company Y, supply chain looks after production. In company Z, the supply chain looks after distribution. So it is only an organizational convenience. But what is exactly supply chain? Anybody directly or indirectly finally contributing to the need fulfillment. So your business exists because you are in the business of fulfilling the need of your customers, right? So that means as long as you are there in the business, you are contributing directly, as well as you have n number of partners who are working with you and with your journey of fulfilling the customer's need. The moment you say that way. Like say, for example, our institution, educational institution, Emeritus is one of our partner, and both of us together are delivering some kind of a services, right? So in our supply chain, Emeritus is one of the important partner. Similarly, there are many other partners. Even suppose when we take classes, right? There are many other partners who takes care of the systems and the classroom management, the physical classroom. Like say, imagine a simple thing. Suppose say the projector is not working. Immediately we cannot actually deliver the value to our customer, right? That's a very simple. It may appear to be very silly, but getting that done, that every time the projector or everything working smoothly itself is a challenging job. So there are a lot of partners involved in it. So there is a supply chain of doing that job. Even Professor Arqum will confirm that we had to cancel classes or shift classes just because sometime air conditioning is not working, sometime audio visual system is not working, and for various reasons. So the value delivery gets disturbed, right? Just because someone did not do the job, not just because of me. I may be doing the job very well, very professionally, but someone else in my supply chain did not do it well. So everyone has to do it together. Then only finally the customer's value will be delivered. It's not just about me or someone else, everyone together. So that's the whole notion of supply chain. Yes. Over to you, Arqum, if you have anything.
I think
Professor,
that's the idea.
yeah, yeah, that's so well said. Basically, if you're delivering any product or service, that is coming off a supply chain, so everything is supply chain.
Yeah.
Perfect. And then we have a question from Mr. Fijul Khomo. He's a professor in anesthesia and a special interest in interventional pain management. They are asking that as if they join the program, the AI part in this program, because they are not a software engineer or who understands that kind of tech, but they want to understand how they can leverage this automation in critical areas of a large government hospital to drive efficiency. So would that be possible without having that sort of technical prerequisite that might be required from a software development program?
Yes. So Professor Arqum, I'm taking this. Yeah. So just to in fact, this is interesting. So to know the background of yours, and in fact, in many of our programs, there are a large number of doctors who attend these programs. Not only our program, as well as many other programs, there are doctors, including our regular MBA also. There are a large number of doctors who attend it. And coincidentally, at least one of my research student is working on healthcare, as well as many of my colleagues and many of my students and many of our students in the institute. So if you look at, say, specifically talking about AI, so in our program, we will not be actually going at a very granular level, how coding can be done or how this job can be done. No. Like say, for example, how AI can be leveraged. Simply suppose say preparing a treatment plan. Preparing a treatment plan takes a lot of time, if you agree with me. And there are hospitals who actually use ChatGPT to prepare a treatment plan. Right. Similarly, if you look at, say, there are a lot of inefficiencies. That the inefficiencies come from, like say, for example, if you talk of, say, Aravinda Eye Care, it's a one standard service that is delivered, primarily cataract surgery, right? But if you talk of, say multi-specialty hospitals, you find that, like, say, my son often asks the question, who is in school, that why in the hospitals in Kozhikode, none of them have a eye care unit in the hospitals. They focuses more on other areas. So this is primarily that, especially if you look at the Aravinda Eye Care model, it's primarily, it can be standardized, and so delivery becomes very or less costly and very easy, you can scale it up. But when you are talking of multi-specialty hospital, there are a lot of inefficiencies crops in, and in fact there are a lot of challenges comes in. And that is where, like, say for example, talking about that, my PhD student who is working on is surgery scheduling, and that's a very complex job. And one of the interesting thing that we have realized, and in fact that everybody agrees, that healthcare is a area where the healthcare management, or the way you manage healthcare, I'm talking of the systems and processes and the operations in Kerala or any another location, or it actually varies significantly from one place to another place. It is highly location specific. So in that case, uh, bringing out some perspective, common perspective, some challenges, the way the different people have looked at the similar problem in different way, different places, that brings in lot of learning. And I'm happy to know that you are from a public in healthcare system. Like my own brother-in-law is a doctor in one of the AIIMS. So we often talk about this. There is a significant difference between the way a public healthcare, or say a hospital, multi-specialty hospital in the government hospital runs, or the way a private hospital runs. And in fact, I can immediately see one significant difference in terms of managing that. Government hospital runs more as a operations. Meaning that when a patient comes, mostly you go to a slot, and whoever is the doctor, he sees it. Similarly, a surgery slot is assigned, and whoever is the surgeon that day, he carries out the surgery. And that is primarily goes that way. I'm not saying that this is a rigid plan. There are a lot of deviations from there, but this is one way. In private hospitals, you will always find that whenever a patient goes, there is a doctor is assigned always, right? So this is his patient, or this is her patient, or Dr. XYZ's patient. So immediately you see operationally, one is being managed as a pure traditional operations, like say manufacturing cars. In the other way, private hospitals more manage it as a project, right? So finally, there is a problem of a customer or a patient that has to be solved. So everything becomes a project management. Simply the differences in these two approaches can bring completely different outcome. So that is why, and in fact, there are a lot to do in public healthcare. And in fact, until and unless the efficiency and effectiveness of the public healthcare improves, the country suffers. Country cannot even grow. That is also true. So that is why it becomes very relevant. Yeah.
Makes sense. Professor, I think there is another very similar question. Mr. Ritesh, he works as a PNL head for a super specialty hospital in Bangalore. The hospital is a proprietor-run organization. They want to understand how would this program be relevant to them. So I think you've already talked about a multi-specialty hospital, but
Yeah.
I think public to private now.
Yeah, there are so that is why I have said that when it comes to healthcare, every context is a new context, and that has to be addressed context specifically. Now, even if you look at, so I have to understand what is the context that you are talking about. Yes, public delivering to private, that part I have understood, but there are a lot of nitty-gritties to make any comments specifically for this case that you have talked about. But you like it. So that is where, so you will find that there are a lot of models that can be brought in. Like one of the problem that we were talking about is, and coming back to this public to private. So one of the important difference that comes in, that there is a differences in processes. And there will be one important thing, that contract, simple. There will be some MOU or some contract that will be signed, right? if it is B2B. I am assuming that hospital to some agency. The way you design the contract, that can influence your outcome. So understanding the nuances, that even the payment terms, the service level agreements, how they actually uh, determine the outcome. And in fact, you will be surprised to know, for simple these kind of things, people have received Nobel Prize. So it is always important to understand some of those basic theories and how these theories applies in different contexts, including healthcare.
That's perfect.
Hmm.
I think we have another question. There's a participant who aspires to be a COO, but they come from an experience leading IT and HR shared services, right? And operational excellence in IT and HR operations and services delivery. Just because switching gears from healthcare, how does this sector benefit from such a program?
Over to you, Professor Arqum.
Right. Thank you. Right. So I think interesting question, right? So first things first, I think in the presentation we had mentioned that possibly the most important tool for you to really benefit from this program is to have a learning orientation. So in that sense, right, wherever you're coming from does have a role to play, but if you have a learning orientation, nothing like it matters. But see, even in IT, right, operations has got a massive role to play. So whether we are talking in terms of context, right? So in IT, a lot of the times you're into problem solving, for example. Problem solving might mean that you're doing implementation project for retailers, implementation project for manufacturers, implementation project for Milton for all that matters, right? Like myself had done a little bit of stint in one of the IT companies, working for a UK-based retailer for an implementation project. The larger point that I'm trying to make is whether you want to stay in IT or want to transition to a different kind of CEO role, because IT also does have CEO. The building blocks would in some senses stay the same, right? Because when we talk of the notion of excellence in quality, or for example, we want to understand that how do you leverage sustainability, anyone and everyone is talking about that, right? Including Emeritus, including IMK, right? So my point is that you are not immune to those changes. It's just that the contextualization might undergo a little bit of change. But if you're looking for a little bit of understanding around how do you look at diagnostics, that okay, how do you diagnose the health of a firm? How do you look at the processes? How do you look at the structure of processes? How do you look at qualities in organizations? How do you look at risk management in the organization? How do you look at sustainability in the organization? I would say those are almost quasi-universal themes. So in that sense, a little bit of contextualization might be required at your level, but I don't foresee any problem, especially given your mindset to transition to a CEO role. So I wish you all the best. Either way, right? So, but I think contextualization is important, but learning orientation, which is obviously evident, if you have it, should not matter.
Following up on that, Professor, there are two more big in the interest of time because we're already over the scheduled time. There are two questions. I'll club them. Mr. Kunal and Mr. Yogaraj, they both, Mr. Kunal is a COO in a software IT company, and Mr. Yogaraj also comes from IT services industry. They want to understand how to evolve, quickly adapt, optimize, build excellence, right? And energize the entire IT industry through that innovation. So they want to understand if this program is the right program for them.
Oh my God, right? So yes and no. Let me tell you why, right? Yes and no both, right? See, this program, uh, if I put it very, very gently, is just a springboard, just a springboard. And for example, right, if you look at any industry in this context, IT, for example, right, is composed of so many moving parts. Right? So, for example, you at one end you could have people trying to create wrappers out of generative AI applications, and at the other end you could have people still trying to maintain databases or for example, right, software solutions coded in Fortran. So my point is that the heterogeneity in terms of the use cases, in terms of the technologies, one of the things that is important to understand is that there is no golden solution to the problem. I think that's a good starting point. But at the same time, what also happens is that is the industry changing? Yes. So I think it was Sun Tzu who said it right long time back that whenever organizations want to transform, they should always have some shadow of their past self. So basically, you should maintain some connect with the old also. So when you transform, you should never forget the old completely. The point that I'm trying to make is that if you really want to get into, let's say, the software development aspect, honestly, this program will not talk about that. If you want to look at, let's say, development, model developments in terms of agile, in terms of, let's say, waterfall, etc., this is not the program. But if you're trying to look, okay, if you want to try to look more in terms of processes and systems, then yes. So the way these programs like these can possibly help you is, again, as I mentioned earlier, that it allows you to look at the reality of the world in a slightly different way. So, for example, if you realize that supply chains are changing and they are going to become more and more deglobalized. So we have been talking about globalization. So the moment you look at deglobalization, or you also realize that, hey, IT industry as a whole might have to go for geographically fenced solutions. And that is going to be the way of the future. We're already seeing this, right? Data localization laws. That is one aspect of it. Right? Splinternet, as people have been talking about, splintering of the internet. That's another aspect of it. So my point is that if you're looking at mechanisms, my personal opinion is that mechanisms may not be a good fit. But if you're looking at strategies and if you're looking at transformative potential, then definitely this program does have the way out. But contextualization again be required, right? So in that sense, yes and no. Depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking for mechanisms, I don't think so. I don't think so. But if you're looking at the larger outcomes, definitely yes.
Perfectly answered, Professor. Thank you so much. And I think the last question, this is from Ms. Ananya. Again, from healthcare setup, she's been managing operations for a 112-year-old, 550 plus bedded multi-speciality hospital in Pune city. They need to learn about how to manage the supply chain better to ensure smoother patient care and journey, given the growing competition of the corporate hospitals around how to become smarter with our vendors and supply chain management, maintaining ethics at the core of the business, so that they can continuously grow and improve. So that's another. I think that's the last question that we have. Yeah.
Afiza, you want to take it? Healthcare.
Yeah, so this is because specific to supply chain. So I thought that you will also be talking about. You can come in anytime. Yeah, so yeah, supply chain in a healthcare supply chain is actually very, very interesting, challenging, and also like say, for example, one of the challenge that happens in healthcare is that many of the or healthcare supply chain, like say if I look at say pharmacy itself, the one characteristic is that large number of SKUs. You have to manage a large number of SKUs, which may be very, very slow moving, as well as it may be very, very costly. So which may not be true in many of the other supply chains. So then it becomes very, very challenging that how do you manage your inventory cost, manage your that as and when, because if the some of the medicines or some of the say other kits, medical kits are not available at critical situations, then it can be fatal, right? So as well as the number of SKUs that you have to manage, right? So that actually there are a lot of theories here. And in fact, the number of SKU itself will increase your cost. So this makes, as well as not every medicine will come from one vendor. You will also have multiple vendors. So that makes managing healthcare supply chain very, very critical and very, very challenging. Look at the recently what has happened during COVID, oxygen supply chain, right? There is one of my old students who have actually studied. So if I talk about that supply itself, supply of oxygen, and in fact, this is what I always emphasize whenever I'm talking of this, that as a country, we have talked a lot of politics whenever this happened. This party or that party, lot of tu meme has happened. But I'm very sad that nobody looked at the technical part of that problem. So there is a very, very standard problem that many others have faced. That is called shortage gaming. And especially it was first noted in semiconductor industry. So semiconductor industry had a serious shortages. And they have noted that everybody orders, inflates their order. So nobody talked about that. The problem is not on not fulfilling the order, but it is more about the way you are allocating the oxygen. And interestingly, nobody has talked about it. It is more about politics rather than the technical aspects. But I could find some of the technical aspects in the Supreme Court monitored SIT who prepared a report, which was later on withdrawn, but it was leaked. And during that leakage period, I could read that. It actually talked about some allocation scheme, and that was very, very interesting. And see, so that makes it is for managing the healthcare supply chain itself, we have to be very, very technically sound, as well as very, very creative and innovative in managing the supply chain. And in fact, coming back to that same oxygen supply chain, there were multiple other things. Like say there is a behavior. The moment there is a shortage of some critical supplies, you get panicked. And that has an adverse effects. As well as when it comes to oxygen, the average speed of the vehicle carrying any other goods, whatever will be the average speed, when you are carrying oxygen, the average speed goes down significantly. So there is also a logistical challenge. So everything combines and to make a very, very problematic environment, and we have seen. And in fact, because we have not analyzed the technical aspect of it much or talked about it, I'm sure again the same thing happens, we'll be ending up with the same situation. And in fact, it feels very sad that during that time we were having all classes online, including many of the classes like yours, as well as other executive programs. Especially people from Delhi were saying that 700 rupees medicine was selling at 70,000 rupees. So this is the problem, or this is the consequences that we may face because we are not able to manage the supply chain better. So this is primarily about talking about disrupt in a disruptive environment, but even on a routine environment also, there are many challenges just because someone did not manage the supply chain well, and there are serious consequences, and even people can die because of that. So that's what is very, very important from a healthcare supply chain point of view. Yeah.
Perfect. So I think this has been a great session. Lots of questions and lots of insightful discussions. Thank you so much, professors. We really loved the conversation. Just topping off the conversation, introducing Emeritus. We have a 12-year-long history of partnering with 55 plus universities globally, and we have developed 450 plus programs with them, which has essentially benefited users from 160 countries, delivered through 300 plus leading faculty, including the two which we have on the session today. And we have touched 2.5 million lives globally. If any questions we have, please reach out to these numbers and email IDs. We will respond back to you within 24 hours. And if it's a weekend, people might be on off, we'll get back to you by 72 hours for sure. Thank you so much, everyone. This was a very delightful session. Thank you so much, professors, for enlightening us today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much,
so
and
much.
wish you all the best, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.